what we're going to talk about today. You had a good idea for what we hit on today.
Mm-hmm.
So you go ahead and say what we're gonna speak on today,
Sure.
Steve.
Yeah, we're just talking about speed training for really any high school athlete, but yeah, speed training for high school athletes. Figured we could talk a little bit about like, I don't know, like theory or what goes into it,
Mm-hmm.
and then drills, exercises, stuff we do that actually works for it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I don't know, and maybe you have a different framework or what works. What do you think about when it comes to speed training? I always think there's 3 parts. There's force production.
Mm-hmm.
How much force can you put into the ground? Like relative force to your body weight, or mass specific force is like the Barry Ross thing. But how strong you are each step, how much force you put into the ground, how quickly you do it, so ground contact time and producing force quickly. And then like the efficiency or technical aspect, the applying force, the direction in which you apply force, which isn't necessarily like, it is some technical, but you could argue the technique at least repositions your leg to apply force again. So thinking of those 3 things, that's kind of not how I've always thought about it, but how I've thought about it the last probably 5 years.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it's these 3 components, and then how to manipulate those 3. Do you think of it in a similar way, or?
Yeah, definitely similar. I was in there looking at. I have a big binder from my internship in grad school, and I remember we got a paper in there that was just all about speed training. It was more of a packet, but I knew he broke it down in kind of like 3 different levels, and I couldn't remember the third one, but so he split it up. This is Mark Jamieson, the guy that I interned under. He split it up into pattern, position, and power.
Okay.
Like those are like the 3 like ways that he thought about it, at least back then.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, I think he had position first. I think position, pattern, and then power. So position is just like your positioning of, basically angles when you're sprinting, right? If you want to think of it that way. Pattern is more of like the rhythm of it. That's kind of how I think of that. And then power is obviously, as you mentioned, not only how much force you can produce, but how quickly you can produce that force. So that's kind of like the first framework that I kind of had when I thought about it, or being taught how to coach and progress speed. I was trying to think of it earlier this morning of I wanted to do some type of similar 3-step process that they all start with the same letter. What's that called?
Is that like, that's not alliteration or
Yeah.
Is it?
I think it is alliteration. Yeah. So I was trying to think of it, but I couldn't think of the third one. But I was thinking of R's. So I was thinking rhythm, force production is the one I couldn't think of, and then like reactivity.
You could do like rate of force
Yeah,
production.
that's good. So yeah, let's do that. So rhythm, rate of force production, and then like reactivity, like how quick you can get off the ground. I think that's a little bit more accurate to how I think about it today. But both of those 2 kind of frameworks I think are pretty similar to kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, and I've thought recently about the rhythm, the coordination, the fluidity of it, because like it is very, like your fast athletes are relaxed while they're doing it, and they can, not all of them are good at sprint drills, which just kind of goes to show like how effective are some of these drills, but kind of something Tony was talking about too.
Yeah.
But like there is that component of it. I almost think of it. I saw Joel Smith, Just Fly Sports Performance. He made a post about the masculine and the feminine of sprinting.
Okay.
And I was like, oh shit, this makes sense. There's the masculine force, rate of reactivity, being explosive, power, like almost the quantifiable stuff.
Sure.
And then there's the feminine, like rhythm and fluidity and coordination that goes with it. I'm trying to figure out where that would belong in what I believe in, and maybe it's just a 4th pillar. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Yeah, definitely a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, just thinking of just from the framework of rhythm, rate of force production, and reactivity, I
Mm-hmm.
think, you know, I think taking the time to do certain drills, sprint drills, to teach not only positioning, but also the rhythm of it,
Mm-hmm.
I think goes a long way, especially with younger athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times, you know, the rhythm aspect, also kind of like the neurological aspect,
Mm-hmm.
is something that I think you could fit into that the rhythm as well. But I think working on all of that, I think just as a baseline to training younger athletes, helps them understand the positioning and kind of what it should feel like,
Mm-hmm.
while you're sprinting.
Yeah.
So like, A skips, like butt kick skips, you know, um, like the prime time series that Tony does,
Mm-hmm.
like you can work into, I really don't, but you can work into like B skips, C skips, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit more specific, I think, to usually what our athletes need, but like a driving A skip as
Mm-hmm.
well, where you're not necessarily focused on driving the knee up, pulling the toe up, and now we're focused on like punching into the ground.
Yeah.
All of those I think are things that we utilize on a pretty consistent basis, at least at the beginning of a program, to kind of again teach the rhythm of it, and also just like the positioning and I guess pattern as well
Mm-hmm.
kind of works into that too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I don't know, in terms of, nice thing about that stuff is you can just bake it into your warm up. You know
Yep.
what I mean? I mean, you can use it as a warm up, but you could also use it as like a teaching tool, and just to get them more and more comfortable with, the positioning of
Okay.
sprints and the rhythm of it all.
And so you're saying that falls into which one of yours?
So I
The
would put
rhythm?
that into into
Cool.
rhythm. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know, maybe my equivalent bucket or pillar would be the direction that force is being applied, so more of the technical stuff. There was one, I should say, I don't, I think it's has like the least amount of carryover, especially for a high school athlete, unless they run like crap.
Yeah.
Um, but there was a Stu McMillan when I was at the Altus conference in
Okay.
Chicago, and he was like talking about sprint drills. He wasn't going in depth. He wasn't talking about what he uses, but almost just like a model or just thought-provoking stuff. He was like, when it comes to A skips or switches or any of the standard like A positioning stuff, he was like, I can do it as well as Noah Lyles.
Yeah.
He was like, you guys, like talking to the crowd, he was like, you guys can probably do it as well as Noah Lyles does it. He was like, so it's not a differentiator between being fast and being slow. Like everyone, the hip flexion portion of sprinting is not a difficult one. It's a big range of motion and stuff, but it's not like a complex part of it.
Sure.
He's like, what differentiates the top, and even though we're more for high school athletes, but what differentiates the top sprinters from everyone else is how they interact with the ground, basically applying force in really short periods of time and in the proper direction. And it's like, I don't know, it was just interesting.
Yeah.
He's like, I still do some of that stuff, like as a warm-up. I think with young athletes, yeah, it can be a good teaching tool for the rhythm, the coordination, yeah, some positioning stuff for sure, because some of them might need it.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've probably seen some funky runners.
Oh, yeah.
So they need a little bit of that stuff. I don't know how well it carries over. It's not super stressful. It's just like a basic drill.
Mm-hmm.
I still use it with young athletes. I use it with draft prep athletes. It's more of like not conditioning the tissue, but to some degree.
Yeah.
Like just getting them ground contacts without it
Yeah,
being
yeah,
high
yeah.
force.
It's like a primer.
Yeah, or like the accumulation phase.
Yeah.
Where they're getting in contacts or working the tissue, but not at such high speed and high force.
Sure.
But so for direction of force, I don't really use, especially with high school athletes, I don't really use a ton of drills.
Yeah.
Some warm-up stuff, some A skips, some A switches, some A like positions. Um, but for the most part, I don't use a ton of. I used to. I used to
Yeah.
think it was important, like cycles or like paw backs or claws. Different coaches call them different things. But for the most part, I don't really use a lot of that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a decent amount, not a ton, probably less than I used to. We used to always start for my first like 2 or 3 years. We would start for the first couple weeks working on like wall drives and like arm drives and things like that. And again, I think, especially for your younger high school athletes, I think there's some benefit to that, to just teaching them, positioning. And as you mentioned, kind of like how you titled your pillar of just like direction of force application, like there's a lot that is to be said about that. Like that makes a big difference. So we would do some of that stuff, and sometimes like a couple years ago, we had a lot of people struggling. Like we would do like our woodway sprints on like the manual treadmills, and that's like it's pretty easy to see like positioning and kind of how, especially at top end speed, like your full leg cycle and things like that. And we would have a decent amount of kids that would just struggle to, because I always tell them to imagine you got like a 12-inch hurdle that you're stepping over in the middle of the treadmill, So we'd have a lot of kids that were just like shuffling back and forth,
Yeah.
when they're running. So like we would add in some type of like full leg cycles, like hand supported on the wall or on a rack or something, just to get them used to that that feeling of what a full leg cycle is at top end speed. So heel to butt, step over step over the opposite side knee, and then paw the ground to pull yourself forward. So we would use some of that stuff, but I feel like, again, kind of like you were mentioning earlier, I just don't know how much carryover it has from doing it at a slow speed, like in a stationary position, to actually feeling it, during full speed or when you're
Yeah.
sprinting.
Yeah.
I think it can be beneficial for someone that has little to no experience or like foundation of sprinting positioning, that they just have never really been coached into it. So I
Yeah.
think that, again, we see a decent amount of that, especially with our younger athletes. But those are kind of the two main ones that we would use, with the wall
Yeah.
drive and arm drive, and then like some type of stationary full leg cycle.
Yep. Yep.
I do like wicket sprints, similar to, working on top end speed, full leg cycle. We don't have a ton of space. We have done it a few times in here. We have 23, 24 yards of turf. We have done it a few times in here, but it's like, yeah, I mean, it's hard,
Yeah.
'cause you got to build up to it and all that. So we would do that sometimes in the summer. Really not so much this summer because we didn't have a track, but I've done that in the summer. I guess I do like those a decent amount.
Wickets.
Yeah, wicket sprints are good just because, again, you're still sprinting. You're
Yeah.
still running and moving with it. But it does teach you to kind of work
Yeah.
the full leg cycle. Another one I would say for like more acceleration specific is, a lot of people go to like the fall in sprints, where you start up on your toes and you
Yeah.
fall. But it's just, to me, it's hard to stay in that position. You see a lot of like hips reaching back, chest falling down, bending in like a not efficient position. Yeah, exactly. But we've done some like super simple like band resisted sprints. You still do see some of that stuff, but just band around the hips. There's a large role on the partner that's holding the band. If you have someone that knows what they're doing and is actually good at it, it can be a pretty good drill. But if you have someone that has never done it before, or is just messing around, it's like, yeah, you're not gonna get anything out of it. But I guess those two, I know it wasn't even the topic, but if I had to pick one for each, for the top end speed, it'd probably be wicket sprints. For acceleration, it'd probably be like a band assisted or band resisted
Yeah.
sprint.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never played around with wickets. Someone texted me, might have been Keith the other day. Maybe it wasn't Keith though, about wickets. I was like, I've never used them.
You never done them?
No, I'm not against them.
Yeah.
And you see sprint coaches from all parts of the world, people who disagree on a lot of stuff, both still do them.
Yeah.
And kind of like you were talking about, as far as like probably a better carryover. I would argue a better carryover to actually sprinting.
Yeah.
Because it is a high speed stimulus and there's a constraint. You're forcing yourself to step over so you don't trip on a wicket.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I've never done it, but I'm not by any means against it. I think it makes sense.
Yeah. The worst part about the wickets is setting it up, dude.
Really?
It's just the setup wise. Like man, it took me a while to figure out because you can look up different things, and I've talked to a few different coaches like on social media that will reach out. How do you set up your wickets? And I'm like, dude, like this is not this isn't gonna make me sound very professional, but like you can look it up and you can find like, oh yeah, it needs to be like I don't know 2.1 meter. The first 3 wickets need to be this distance, and the last 5 need to be this distance. They need to be a little bit further apart as it was later on. And I'm like, dude, that's just not realistic for me, in terms of setting it up. So I literally I found the 6-inch hurdles that we have. Like my setup is I'll put a 6-inch hurdle, I'll double it, so I'll roll it over, and then the length of my hand, and then I put another wicket. Because it literally took me I was doing them myself, and I'm like, man, I need to figure out distancing wise in there. That's the best I could find. It took me a couple weeks to figure it out, but I'm like, yeah, I double it, and then I put the length of my hand, and then I put another wicket. And for 90% of our athletes, it works pretty well.
Yeah.
Obviously if someone has longer legs, they're getting kind of tripped up.
Yeah.
So I might set up one that's a little longer for the taller athletes. Same thing with shorter athletes. They're reaching for it, because it's a little bit. So that's the worst part of the wickets. But if you can get down, a way to set it up that's pretty consistent, I think there's a lot of benefit to it just in terms of just, the positioning at top end speed and the direction of the force being applied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. All right, I'll go to the next bucket of I'll go to speed of force production, how quickly you can put force into the ground. So if I think direction of force, which is super important, but as far as the technical drills that go with it, I think probably has the least amount of carryover, least benefit overall of these 3. Again, not to say it's not important, just the least. Speed of force production for high school athletes, I would say, is number 2, in my opinion. So how quickly you can apply force into the ground.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the highest levels, that is the limiting factor, how quickly you can put in enough force to keep you upright and push you forward. But for a high school athlete, I don't think it's typically the limiting factor. Maybe for some of the faster guys you see and stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, so you need to apply force into the ground quickly. High school athlete, you're probably on the ground 0.2 of a second. Really fast people, a little less than that. So how quickly can you use as much force as you can? And drills I like for that, really for the most part, plyometrics. Well, sprinting is always going to be important for that. I love overspeed sprinting, but that's going to be the hardest thing to do and the most potent or most aggressive stimulus. But plyometrics, pogo hops, ankle hops, tuck jumps, hurdle hops, any sort of depth jumps. I've seen you do depth jumps over here. And then my favorite, band assisted jumps.
Yeah.
Something I feel like I talk about a lot. But any sort of plyometric where the goal is, you're still putting force into the ground. It's not not to say there's anything wrong with the little tippy-tappy jumps, but somewhere you're still putting force into the ground, but it's as fast as possible. Because if you're trying to teach your body to produce force faster, you need to overload that side of the spectrum.
Sure.
And if that's your focus, or if you're using band assistance, or you're overloading the eccentric portion of it, I think that's a great way to get done.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think, we start for the past, this is, I think, my second year doing this. At the beginning of each program, our Mondays are our speed days. And so I'll take everybody through a 10, 15 minute, rudiment series. And I guess this isn't really so much as how fast you can get off the ground. There's that stimulus into it as well, but there's more to it than that. I always tell the kids, we're training the foot, the ankle, and the calf, right? I think Scott was the one that said it during one of our conferences or whatever. that you can think of like the lower leg as like the tires on a car. You know what I mean? Like the better your tires are, like the better the car is going to handle. So the more prepared the lower leg is, like the better you're going to be able to sprint and jump and do all of that
Yeah.
stuff. So like we do some, have them take their shoes off and just work through like, I always tell them two main things is like we want to get height, but we also want to be quick off the ground. Okay, so we do a lot of different like little ankle hops through that for the first. Usually do it like 4 or 5 weeks, and then pretty much everything that you mentioned, right? Like depth drops, I think are always good. The band assisted, like pogo jumps, I think are great. Something that I'm curious of to kind of like get your opinion on is, a lot of those exercises that we're talking about is more like, vertical force application. What do you use, if anything, for like working on the same thing but like in a horizontal fashion?
Yeah, and that's weird that you asked that because I've been doing a lot of it this week, just like playing around with different things. We'll do like continuous broad jumps. We have a tape measure on the floor at the field house, you've probably seen, and it goes out like 15 feet. So start at the end of the tape measure and you do like 2 broad jumps. Okay, how far can we get? And some people, the high school athletes, are getting over it, which is good. Or like bounds, or like a triple jump, like starting on 2 feet, boom, boom, stick it, things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes I go back and forth on, there's this book, I think he has 3 books, I've read 2 of them, by Dan, I forget his last name, Cleatherly, something like that. Good books though, short, easy to read. One's called Force, one's called The Biomechanics of Sprinting. It's like Force Part 2, Biomechanics of Sprinting, something like that. And he talks about like the J.B. Morin research on horizontal force in sprinting and like how it's a predictor of speed. And he's like, the force in sprinting it's just the orientation of your body. If you're vertical and upright, that's like at top speed, but like these same positions and postures is the same during acceleration.
Yeah.
And it's not that you need to like, I don't know, try to change the orientation of force, because it's still, you're going from hip flexion to hip extension.
Right.
It's just whether you're here or you're there. And to some degree I get that. So I kind of go back and forth on, does it really matter how specific we are to being horizontal? Especially at top speed when the majority of the force is vertical.
Yeah.
And even in acceleration with a good forward lean, as you're first touching the ground, the application of force is vertical to keep you from falling on your face. So anyway, but yeah, I'll play around with stuff like that, or even banded versions of it, assisted versions of it with the draft prep guys.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's, I like the triple jump. I think a triple jump is good for that. Assisted or like repeat broad jumps, I think are good for that. This isn't a plyometric, but like I don't know if you saw it the other day. Like I tried some Uris the other day for the first time. Have you ever done those?
No, I've seen them. How do you feel about them?
I liked it. Like I've only done them once.
Yeah. Felt good?
Yeah, they felt good. The setup took me a little bit just to figure out the best way to do that. But I like the idea of, working on multiple different factors of sprinting within one drill, right? So like ankle stiffness, like horizontal force production, like hip flexion, active front foot, like you're getting all of that, and hip extension as well. Hip flexion, hip extension on opposite sides of the hip. So no, I liked them. I thought they were good. It's just a matter of like, okay, like how do we set it up in here for, that's what my mind always goes to when we have 50 kids in here, like how are we going to do it? And I think we will be able to if I ever want to. I don't know if I won't be this semester, but yeah, I was curious if you've ever used those or not. Or,
no, I'm not against them. I've seen it get like more popularized by Cal Dietz.
Yeah.
Cal Dietz is doing it. It's probably good.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't ever played around with them.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting, just kind of feeling it and seeing what it feels like. And then, so third pillar, is how much force you can produce
Yeah, that's how
for
I.
you.
Yes, and yeah.
Okay, so yeah. So I would, that kind of fits into the rate of force uh, production, or really just the power aspect of it. The two sides to power is obviously how fast you can produce that force, but also how much force you can produce, which I think, at least in terms of high school athletes, is probably has the highest ceiling to like how much it can be improved upon from freshman to senior year. And so obviously like just bilateral strength exercises, so squats, deadlifts. I think, should go without saying, but like a lot of single leg stuff, sprinting is pretty much all single leg movement when you really break it down. So like single leg, so whether it's lunges, step ups, there's a ton of different,
Yep.
variations that you can do of just those two in general. But I think how much force an athlete can produce or how strong they are, especially if they come in pretty green or pretty fresh, it's like, man, they're going to be able to improve a lot in that
Yeah.
area for
Yeah.
sure.
Nope.
Yeah.
I agree. I was wanting to save that for last. I think for high school athletes, I think that is oftentimes the limiting factor.
Yeah.
Like most room for improvement. You get stronger, for the most part, you're gonna get faster.
Yeah.
There's a book, Underground Secrets to Sprinting, or Underground Secrets to Sprint Train, something like that, by Barry Ross. He was the coach of Allison Felix, track
Okay.
sprinter. And in high school, I forget the exact program, but she would trap bar deadlift, I think every day. Not like however often she was working out. And it was basically like trying to just hit a new max on trap bar deadlift, and then she would do hurdle hops or something with it, and pretty much that was it.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, if we can just get you stronger, like you're gonna get faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can put more force into the ground, you can push yourself further, so. Yeah, everything you said, it's so much weight room based. Squats, deadlifts, trap bar deadlift, whatever you prefer, don't care. Single leg stuff you already touched on. The whole time you were talking about single legs, I was thinking about Bulgarians, because I'm still sore from them. I need to quit doing those on Fridays because it just ruins me. But yeah, just getting stronger. Some kind of like weird stuff that I love depth drops, like just landing it, just playing around force plates, and you see like there's no exercise. It's one of the best for like highest force production. If you do like triple jump or bounds, like hopping, single leg hopping for higher distance, it's going to be more force than that, but without it being a reactive component. I'd say drops, and then overcoming isometrics.
Yeah.
Something I've talked about a good amount. Yeah, just like putting a bar underneath the rack, something that this wouldn't, you'd have to do something else, but like a position where it's not going to move, and you're pulling as hard as you can, or you're squatting and you're pushing into pins as hard as you can, and just, again, playing around force plates, and you see like the spike. And my time, just as like for me, so N equals 1, it's not like a study. When I was at Bomberitos, and I forget what day of the week it was, but I would sprint, like every Monday, let's say, I would sprint. I would time the sprint, and the only thing I would ever change is the lift. So I'd sprint, do a couple flies, then I'd go in the weight room and lift, see if what I did on week 1, if my time got better for week 2, or if I did something different for week 2, if my time got better for week 3. And I'd be like pretty consistent with my flies, and then there was one week where instead of doing squats or trap bar, whatever I was doing, I did a split squat iso. I think I had the bar like in between my legs and like under pins, and like I'm trying to like press it up basically with my leg, if that makes sense. And it took off, I forget exactly what it was, like 1/10 of a second the next week. I was like, oh shit, like I gotta keep doing these. And then got off of that, got back to regular lifting, moved to Fort Wayne, regular lifting, and it was not it's 2025, not the winter of 2024. It was like December of 2023, I started playing around with isometrics again and doing a ton of drops. Like pretty much my whole workout, I'm doing like pull up and drop and catch myself, and lower body wise, I'm doing isos and drops. And I saw my sprint time significantly improve as well, like PR'd. Still haven't even touched those times since. It's like, okay, there's something to this.
Yeah.
That really, and maybe some of it is just like, you're not going to be sore from, especially isos, maybe drops, you'll be sore, but you're not going to be sore from it, so you're pretty fresh. But just the high amount of force, and like you talked about like the brain or the neural aspects of it as well. Something about activating such high amounts of muscle in such short period of time, I think was huge for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. Have you ever done any, I don't even know what you would call him, but I see, what's his name? I forget his name. He's got an Instagram, it's like Be Fast, something. He does a lot of like, a lot of stuff with like just the neurological aspect and you know what I'm talking about?
The dude down in Texas, black
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
Brian I forget his last
Yeah.
name, but yes, yeah.
Yeah, he does a lot of like, you know, a lot of,
Power Performance or
Yeah.
Power Plus, something like
Power
that.
Plus, I think
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, he does a lot of like the, you know, like stability ball, and like he does stuff in water too, and he does stuff with like resistance bands, where, you know, a lot of the goal is just to address the neurological aspect of sprinting or whatever it is, just basically moving your limbs as fast as you can. Have you ever done any of that stuff?
Yes. Yeah.
So I did, man, this is a couple weeks ago, but I was trying to think of how to set it up, like just working out by myself. I put it on the GHR. I double looped a resistance band, and I was basically just working on like, just like a knee like flexion type of like working the hamstring as fast as you could. Really, the setup was not great. I could find a better way to do it. But like that shit was hard, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It really is. Like that's one aspect that I think, you know, I don't play around enough with. But I've seen a lot of people talk about it, and to me it makes sense. Like Tony Holler talked about it as well a little bit, just about, you know, it's electrical. You know, like how fast can your brain send messages to your muscles? Like how fast are you able to move those muscles? Like I think there's a lot that, for me, that's kind of uncharted territory. You know, where like
Yeah.
kind of really haven't played around much with that. And I think, again, for the subset of athletes that I work with, being high school athletes, it's like, yeah, there's could be benefits to that, but I think there's more, you know, important things maybe to address and to work on. That's easier for us to work on. But that's something that, you know, I think makes sense, you know, in terms of how fast your brain can send signals to your muscles. Especially like the higher level of an athlete that you are. I think there's some benefits to be found there as well. But yeah, I don't know. I was just curious. I don't know why I thought of that. But
No, I'm with you 100%. I think that guy, not to say I agree with everything he does, or like, it looks like that's all they do. Like there's no lifting. I could be wrong. But to see the amount of hate he gets, and see people that I'm familiar with like reposting or talking crap about like what he's doing, I'm like, I don't see how people don't see that having some place in the workout. Again, just playing around force plates and doing like a line drill, like step over, back, but you're going as fast as you can. And between doing pogo hops, between doing band assisted pogo hops, that was the fastest ground contact time I could have. Now, it had very little force production. There was nothing. You know, it's like, if you're looking at like what's that, EKG, like someone's heart, I'd be dead. There's like very little force production, and that's people's complaint. But it's like, okay, if we go to the other side of things, like doing an ISO or just squatting, doing a heavy squat, it's like, yeah, that's slow. There's to think that has a better carryover in general compared to something that has a super fast contact time or contraction time, even like your banded stuff. To think that those don't have, to some degree, potentially the same amount of carryover, they're overloading one side of the spectrum. I
Yeah.
don't think there's anything wrong with that. And then, kind of on that note, there's a guy, a coach I used to work with, that we were like DMing each other back and forth about like sharing those videos. What do you think about this? Blah, blah, blah. And I kind of shared my thoughts similar to what I just did. And he was like, oh, I think the best athletes in the world, because there was a video of Tyreek Hill, like in his, like how fast his feet move. Not in a sprint, but like in a drill. And he was like, oh, I think the fast athletes are just good at that. They don't train it, but they're just, okay, cool. But they're good at a lot of things without having to like solely focus on it. He's like, yeah, but I think if you just do traditional power training, like weighted jumps and power cleans, you'd get better at that. I'm like, I don't see how those are related at all.
He's saying if you do those, you'd get better at what?
Like a fast foot drill.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I really don't think. Not to say there's not a place for cleans and weighted jumps and things like that, but to think that, oh yeah, it's heavy squats wouldn't carry over to, but like cleans, which are faster, like you might be moving the bar at 1.5 meters per second, but it's not, 800ths of a second contact time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there's a place for it, just like I think there's a place for heavy squats and ISOs, and I think they all can play a role.
Yeah. That was one thing that kind of forgot to mention in terms of like how much force you can produce or how strong you are with the lifts is like Olympic lifts, You look at a lot of like track and field programs, like they implement a lot of different like Olympic lift variations, because I think it is kind of that midway point of, sure, you can still move a decent amount of weight, but you're also doing it
Fast.
in a fast, in a fast manner.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I forgot to mention with that I think we don't do a ton of them, but like we'll hang clean and power clean. But I think those are good, again, just as kind of a midway point where you can kind of hit both ends of the spectrum a little bit.
Yeah.
Something else that I forgot to mention that Tony Holler.
No, we're on a first name basis with him. It's Tony.
Yeah. Something else that I thought that was really interesting that he said, it was super simple, but say he defines plyometrics as landing and jumping at the same time.
I like that.
I thought that was
I
really
like
good.
that. Yeah.
But that makes sense, because again, it's just a different way to say just you're getting off the ground as quick as you can.
Yeah.
I don't know if you said it or somebody else said it maybe on one of your Instagram posts a while ago, but thinking about like, dropping a golf ball on concrete.
That wasn't me, but I like it.
Someone, I think it was on one of your posts though. Someone
Okay.
said it. It must have been someone else. But that also makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I've used that a couple times, like with kids, like or just even a bouncy ball. Like think of dropping a bouncy ball or throwing a bouncy ball off of a wall or something. Like how
Yeah.
fast it's off the ground. Like that's kind of the stimulus we're trying to kind of get out of our ground quickness training. And then one last thing, I forget, you said something that made me think of this, but when I was in grad school, Mark Jameson did it wasn't an experiment, it was like his own like kind of experiment with, looking back on it, he would use us as like guinea pigs, which was kind of fun. But we did something, I forget exactly what he was looking for. But we did something where he had everybody do like, it was like a 3 or 4 week thing, and each week we would do one day of it. And it was something with like, he was looking at like velocity based training stuff.
Okay.
But he would have us, I wish I could remember exactly how he had us set it up. We would have us like each week, he would have us do like 2 to 3 different sets, I think. It was mainly just a back squat, or maybe it was a back squat and a bench. Maybe we would do lower, upper, it doesn't really matter. But he would look at, how fast we could move a certain weight, given like the percentage based off of our 1 rep max or whatever it was. Something, I'm butchering this. But the reason I bring it up, it was interesting because at that time, like, I didn't do it for a long time, but I was like, it was at the time when I was training for like a powerlifting competition.
Okay.
And so like I'm not moving shit fast at all.
I forgot you did a powerlifting.
Yeah, I only did one. It was cool. It was fun, but yeah, it was all right. But it was interesting because like there was a wide variety of interns. So like a lot of the guys were athletes in college, and I wasn't. So I had just been lifting weights for a long time, and when we would get up to like the speed, strength, speed, the higher ends. Like, dude, I could not fucking do that shit.
You had to go super light?
Yes,
Yeah.
dude. It was like, because I was just not, and I remember talking to him about it. He's like, you're not, I mean, think about it. You never move anything fast at
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
And that was kind of like an eye-opening experience for me, because where it was like, I was at a certain weight where according to like just general guidelines, I should be able to move it this fast. But I was not used to like moving anything fast at
Yeah.
all. And so I had to go much lighter than what most other people did,
Yeah.
moving that stuff. But then on the other end of it, I can move like relatively heavier loads like at a decent speed compared to everybody else.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that, I stayed on one end of the spectrum,
Uh-huh.
of just lifting heavy weights slow,
Yep.
and I never did anything over here where you're using lighter weight and trying to be fast and explosive with it,
Yeah.
but this whole conversation kind of made me think of that. It was just interesting because it was like, yeah, I mean, I'm trying my hardest to move this shit as fast as I can. I
Yeah.
just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I just didn't have it in me to do it. But yeah, he would do some interesting stuff like that. Just kind of look at different things here and there. But this conversation kind of made me think of that.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's
Yeah.
funny.
So I don't know, man. I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah.
In terms of, I think that's a good kind of look into how we. I think you're much more. I think you're much more of a speed guy than I am. You know what I
Yeah, I
mean?
really like it.
I think you have an innate interest. That's another thing I was gonna say. It was interesting as I'm cutting up this video with Coach Holler. It was interesting to look at, when we're doing like our drills, like how, and you'll see it too when you watch it, but like how, for most of them, how much longer you're off the ground than I am. You know what I mean? So like the box jumps,
Oh,
the pogo
gotcha.
hops, the bounds,
Yeah.
like you can tell like you are, especially if you slow it down, you can tell like you're off the ground like for a longer time than I am.
We're going to have to put that in slow-mo and put it as a reel.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it was really interesting, because like, and again, it's one thing as, as Tony's watching it, I'm sure he's like, he can see that you're, staying off the ground longer, which in turn, like you're producing more force, and able to, the longer you are off the ground, the more force you're producing just in general. So that was also interesting to see, because a lot of the stuff that he called out in terms of like who he thought was going to be faster and like different, even speeds and times, like he was pretty spot
He
on.
was good. That was
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, so that was interesting as well. But watching it back was also, because you don't really see it, when you're doing it, but like watching like the footage of it, you're like, oh shit, like I do see what he's seeing as well.
Yeah.
You know?
That's interesting.
So anything else, man, on top of this? I mean,
No.
I want to do a quick review of what's your.
Let's hit it.
Yep. So I'm just gonna stick with rhythm. I would go rhythm, rate of force production, and reactivity.
Okay.
Those kind of are, I would say, my kind of outline of how I look at speed training. So rhythm is just like mechanical drills, the stuff that we talked about, A-skips, switches, all of that stuff, just kind of like your warm-up stuff. Rate of force production, I think built into that is it's both, right? It's how much force you can produce, so how strong you are and how quickly you can produce that force. I would put both of those into the rate of force production. And then reactivity, I guess now that I think about it, reactivity would be more so that the end of the spectrum where it's like how quick you can produce that force. So I'm going to redo that. We're going to go rhythm is the same as I mentioned. Rate of force production is how strong you are, how much force you can produce, and then reactivity is like how quickly you can produce that force.
The 3 R's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll go in that same order. We're saying the same thing, we just have different words for it.
Yeah.
And it's just funny how our brains work. But the direction of force application, so that's technical drills that put you in a good position to direct force. For a high school athlete, I think it's probably the least important.
Yep.
But yeah, as you mentioned, it's technical drills. It's skipping, it's different type of sprint specific skips, it's A switches, it's cycles, it's that. There's the speed of force production, so how quickly you can produce force. That's going to be plyometrics. I think, yeah, plyometrics for the most part, fast twitchy drills. There's like med ball throws and things like that.
Yep.
Important for high school athletes, but not as important, I don't think, as increasing your force production. I think for most athletes, high school athletes, a little bit undertrained physically, if they can produce more force, if they can get stronger in the weight room, they're going to be faster sprinters.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense to me. I think
Yeah.
that's a good overview of it. We'll come out. It might be, I don't know. We'll come out. We did a really good episode with Tony Holler, who we've been speaking of off and on throughout this conversation. And that obviously is, he's a speed guy. He's a track and field coach. So, that'll be coming out. I think that's a really good one. I think he gives us a lot of good insight.
I think that will come out the same week as this.
Okay, that'd be perfect if it does. So
Yeah.
that's applicable to this whole conversation as well. And he has a ton of experience. He's been doing this for a long time, and it's just interesting to hear his points of view and just kind of learn from him a little bit. So that kind of goes hand in hand with this, but keep a lookout for that, and we'll just keep knocking these out, keep putting it out. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.